Yesterday, the countries of Europe voted to approve Article 13, which has been renumbered Article 17, and so in 2 years, this law will definitely go into effect in Europe. But I've received some comments from Americans who've said, hey, this stinks for Europe that Article 13 is applicable, but how the heck does it affect us in America? I think you'd be surprised. Let's hit this. Hello, my friend. I'm Corzine, your YouTube lawyer. Today, we're going to be breaking down how Article 13 impacts America. I did some research on this, and I was really surprised to find all the variety of different ways that Article 13's provisions impact America and other non-EU countries. You'll remember that Article 13 is that law that was passed on March 26, 2019 by the EU Parliament. Well, yesterday, and on April 15th, 2019, the European nations as a whole approved that law. Article 13 makes social media platforms civilly liable for copyright infringement on their platform. So if a person posts a meme, let's say, and it has copyright infringement material on it, then not only is the poster going to be liable under Article 13, but also the social media platform. You'll remember that this is different than the prior law of Europe, which had a safe harbor for all social media platforms. The view was that the internet was kind of like a telephone pole, and that people would make posts on the telephone pole, and the company that owned the telephone pole had no input as to those posts, and therefore shouldn't be held liable for any copyright infringement of those posts. So to break it down, Article 13 basically makes social media platforms like Facebook and Twitch and Instagram and YouTube scared to be able to have copyright content on their platform because they know that they're going to be sued by some crazy lawyer like me. And so the practical result for all of us out there is that social media platforms will likely block way more content than they should to be able to protect themselves from civil lawsuits. I want to make it clear, Article 13 is a law that strictly applies to Europe, to the 28 nations in the EU. It does not apply to America or Canada or Australia or any non-EU country. So I can hear you asking, what's the big deal? Yeah, Europe got hosed by Article 13, but how does that affect me? It's all about you, isn't it? Article 13 has the practical effect of making social media platforms design and develop and implement these mega content ID filters that will sift through the billions of messages that get sent per day. And when I think about how large an undertaking this is, it really blows me away. I mean, think about it. Every Facebook post, every Instagram meme, every YouTube video, every Twitch live stream, all that has got to be filtered by these mega filters of the social media platforms in Europe. It's going to take an enormous amount of money to implement these new systems. And the platforms have another problem. Article 13 makes possession of copyright infringement material within the European nations a law violation. So if Andy the American wants to send copyrighted material to Frank in France, then the content ID systems, the filters in Europe, would block that transmission. And if Frank in France wanted to send a meme that had copyrighted material on it to Andy in America, then Europe's social media platforms would filter that content too. But what if Andy came over from America to visit Frank in France, and Andy on its Facebook feed had lots of posts that had fair use copyrighted material on it, and it was legal in every other country besides Europe, but he wanted to access that feed in France with Frank. Under Article 13, that would not be permitted. And so the social media platforms would have to block the access to those fair use memes or posts of Andy in America. As I was reading Article 13 provisions, it came to mind, how are the social media platforms going to block Andy from accessing his content on Facebook, let's say, that has totally legal, fair use content in every other country besides the European countries, but block it in Europe? Well, the dangerous and real fact, and I think the whole point of this video, is that the only way that social media platforms operating in Europe are going to be able to block Andy from accessing his fair use content in France, visiting Frank, is that they're going to have to filter each and every communication of the world. Think about what a massive undertaking this is. The social media platforms are going to have to review each and every communication of the world, determine whether or not that communication contains copyright infringement material, and then determine whether or not that copyright material is protected by the fair use doctrine, which, as you know, is a subjective decision. It's not suitable for computers to do. And then they're going to have to tag each piece of information, each communication, whether or not it's suitable for EU countries or outside of the EU. And then in the EU, they're going to either have to block the upload or block access from people outside of the country visiting Europe to see that type of content. The sheer size of this job leads me to believe that Article 13 is really going to lead to a slowdown of the internet, especially in Europe, but I believe it also will affect countries outside of Europe like America. I also believe that given the size of our internet using public, that the process of filtering all communications is going to lead to a lot of mistakes. And those mistakes are really going to impact people, and they're going to force people off the large social media platforms and onto underground social media platforms. It reminds me of the days like in the 1960s of pirate radio. And I don't want to beat around the bush with you. Let's just call this process of filtering for what it is: censorship. It's a curbing of our free expression on our modern internet platform. Article 13 will force all the social media platforms to censor and block all the world's communications. It will discourage the world's people who maybe are not comfortable in public forums from exercising their full rights of freedom of expression. And I think this is just going to lead to apathy. People are going to be tired of being blocked. They're going to see messages on the internet, posts on the internet that lack substance, and so they're not going to care. They're not going to want to watch YouTube videos because they're going to be censored and filtered. They don't even want to try. Why try when it's just going to be blocked? And this apathy is going to lead to decreased posts on Facebook and Instagram, less views on YouTube and Twitch, and fair use content is going to be blocked in the EU. So people right now in Europe, 28 nations, millions and millions of people, will not be able to use the free rights of freedom of expression to be able to create content from borrowed content. And so that's going to result in decreased views of European content. There'll also be decreased views of YouTube and Twitch content for people that are traveling. You know, you want to be able to use the internet to watch videos. Think about it. All the videos that are legal, that have borrowed content in America, cannot be legal and are not legal in Europe. So people who are Americans or Australians or Canadians or whoever who are traveling through Europe are not going to be able to access the stuff that they want to watch, that they can watch freely in the rest of the world. Article 13 is a major change for the internet, which I believe ultimately will lead to less communication, less substantive communication, and decreased views on YouTube and the other social media platforms. Article 13 is a complicated law, and if you'd like more detail on it, watch this video right here. If you're new to the channel, come join us. I'd love to see you here. Hit the like button, consider subscribing, and let's continue this discussion about Article 13 and its effect on America on our Discord server. There's a link to the Discord server in the description section below. All right, that's enough for today. We'll see you next time.